Hello. Welcome to my Thursday afternoon Facebook Live, sharing with you some of the joy and fun I find in making cards. Today I have a card to share with you that has actually come from my retreat day last weekend. And the reason why I'm sharing this one with you is my little card had a little mishap, so I'm going to make it again. It fell in the ink, and while that's not the end of the world, I do like it better when it's a little bit cleaner. So this card also I wanted to show to you because it's using a stamp set and embossing folder bundle that is only available for another 2 weeks. 2 weeks. It's in the Sale-a-bration catalogue just here. It's a reward in Australia for a $180 spend, and it is a bundle and embossing folder combo. And if you have a close look at my card and at the catalogue here, you'll see that I have cased the catalogue. My card's almost the same as the one in the catalogue. Casing is about copying and sharing everything, or copying and selectively editing. So that's the inspiration for my card. It's a great idea to look through your catalogues at any time to give you inspiration when you can't think of what to do. I love using the catalogue for that. Okay, so I've got a standard size card. I'll just squish that in half and pop that aside. And then the next layer of my card, actually I have 2 pieces that are just a little bit smaller than the card front. So the card front is 10.5 centimeters wide by 14.5 centimeters tall. So it is half of a piece of cardstock, which is 21 centimeters, making it 10.5 centimeters that way by 14.5 that way. And so these 2 pieces are just a little bit smaller, and they're 14 by 10 centimeters. What I'm going to do with these guys is to emboss one for the front of my card. So to emboss, you just pop it straight into your folder, and then I make a sandwich for my embossing machine, which includes, the actual embossing machine has these great little instructions on them. So this is number 1, the base platform, and it's got number 1. So it has die cutting to make dies. This is embossing folders. So we have standard embossing folders, which are a little bit thinner, and you use 2 cutting plates, number 3. But this embossing folder is quite a bit thicker. So I'm using base platform number 1, putting in my embossing folder and the cardstock inside, and then top platform number 4. And then I'll just run that through my machine. One thing to remember when you're embossing is very, very important that you always put the hinge end of your embossing folder through the machine first, because when you put an embossing folder through the machine, it builds up pressure, and the air must escape out the end. If you put your embossing folder in the other way, it will break the hinge. So that's really important. All right, I'll just pop that through my machine now. And that's done. Now check out this lovely texture on there. See that lovely texture coming from that embossing folder? So it's gone from a totally flat piece of cardstock to a lovely textured piece. Now my piece for the inside, I'm going to emboss the bottom bit of it just to add a little bit of texture. So I'm going to pop that in my folder just on the very edge, and then add my top platform again, and then I'll run that through my machine. Alright, and that one has a little bit of embossing just on the very edge there. Okay? Rightio, that's the embossing part done. Next I've got my little piece of cardstock for the front detail, and I'm using the Elegant Tag Topper punch to create that lovely shape. So I'm going to slide that in to the very end and punch. and then turn it around and slide it into the very edge. So I cut my cardstock exactly the width of that punch there, so that I just had to slide it in to create those lovely edges there. Alright, let's do our stamping. This Softly Sophisticated stamp set is rather fun because it has 2 steps to build up a picture. So it's called a 2-step stamp set. So I'm going to add my leaves. I've chosen my leaves and my greeting and my flowers. That's all the stamping I need to go. And because I want to make sure I've got enough space, I think I'll stamp my greeting first in pecan pie. And basic stamping means that you want to only get ink just on the very top of that image, the raised surface of your stamp there. And the way to do that is to go pat, 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 very softly. Our ink is really very absorbent, nice ink pads, and then when you're actually stamping, go straight down, push, and straight up. Okay? So I had plenty of ink on that. Now I'll just clean off my stamp and I can get rid of my pecan pie. Alright, the next bit of stamping I'm going to do is a bit of garden green for the leaves, and pop that next. So alright, so next, pat, 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 pat. You only want ink just on that very raised surface of the stamp. If you get ink on your blocks, you're actually pushing too hard into your ink pad. And the way to avoid getting too much ink is just to pat very gently. You can pat it lots and lots of times, but just very gently. Alright, now I'm going to stamp my leaves straight down, straight up. Oh, I've got a very, very wet ink pad there. And then on this one, for the inside of my card, pat, 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 straight down, straight up. And then the last bit of stamping is for my flowers. And as I said, it's a 2-step stamp set, which means that these flowers line up exactly inside those leaves. And because the stamp is actually photopolymer, you can see where you're lining up. But I will say, my hint for this particular flower is to line up this little side bud on the side, right with that little bit of bud just in the garden green there. So pat, 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 and line up that little side one, and everything else will find its way. There we go. Pat, 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 and straight down and straight up. There we go. Now I've misstamped my little flower there a little bit, so what I might do is just come in with my marker, which is Moody Mauve, exactly the same as my stamp, and just touch it up just a little bit to fix up that bit of colour I didn't quite make. There we go, all done. Alright, so the last little bit of my card then is to add some really beautiful bubble bath ribbon. So the first bit I'm going to do is wrapped around the inside, the piece for the inside of my card. So I just wrap my ribbon around there, one and two, and trim that off, and then add some more adhesive just over the top of the ribbon to add that inside my card. And there's the inside of my card finished. And then for the front of my card, again, I'll add a little bit of ribbon wrapped around it. I've put a little bit of adhesive either side, and then just lining that up and wrapping that around. Trim that off and add some more adhesive back over the top of the ribbon so it sandwiches it all in place when I'm sticking it onto my card. Pop that onto the front of my card there. There we go, all lined up very neatly and nicely. See how that works? And then I'll add my greeting and decorated element there, and I'm going to use for that some stamping dimensionals just to raise it up a little bit, make it look very much like a feature. Pull the backs off those and add you to the front of my card. And then I've got a little bit of ribbon left to make a bow. So I'm going to make a bow using my fingers. So if you start off with the tail there and then wrap it around your fingers twice, just try and make sure my two tails are, wrap it around your fingers twice, making sure I'm holding both ends of the ribbon between my thumb and my forefinger. And I'm coming up with the bottom tail from the front and then through my, in between my fingers there, and then reaching over to the back, flipping over my fingers on the back, I'm just going to tie a knot. Okay, tie a knot there. And you can also tie a double knot if you want to, just to hold it in place. So then you've got a ribbon, a bow, a double bow there, okay? And then I'm going to put that on the side of my card, just like that. Trim my tails, 1, 2, and put that, adhere that on, I think, with a dimensional, because I find that works nice and strong with your ribbon, okay? And tuck that on the side there. There we go, you're in my thoughts. And finally, you have to have some bling. So I'm just going to use some of these rainbow dots to add a little bit of bling to my card, to the front of my card. There's some there and another one up there. There we go. There's my original card from the workshop, which I can't send away because it's been dropped into the ink. And then my copy today using Moody Mauve ink. Which is your favourite? The Moody Mauve, or this one actually has Fresh Freesia ink, I think. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye bye now.